All right, I stumbled across this interesting broadcast with Joe Rogan. Very funny, very entertaining, very intelligent guy, Joe Rogan. I'm very surprised. I just kind of stumbled across this video and I was just like, let me see how smart Joe Rogan is. So I just decided to listen to it. And he's very smart. He's able to put two and two together. Um, and so basically during the show, they were just speculating about, you know, Tower 7 collapsing and it looked kind of weird. And so I looked at the video and I watched it, Tower 7, and it did look weird. And so let's listen to this just for a second. So Brian Dunning is basically bullying Joe Rogan. He's basically saying that if Joe Rogan believes that Tower 7 is a controlled demolition, that's tantamount to Joe Rogan thinking that 9/11 was a government conspiracy of some sort. And so Joe Rogan was basically defending himself and saying uh, the tower fell and it did kind of look weird, but he doesn't know if it's a government conspiracy or not. Or he's basically saying that he doesn't, or that he wouldn't talk about that or whatever. Um, but Brian Dunning himself believes that Tower 7 was a controlled demolition. So if Brian Dunning believes that Tower 7 was a controlled demolition, Brian Dunning, to a degree, because I'm assuming he's a very intelligent pseudoscientist, if he believes that Tower 7 was a controlled demolition, he's basically saying he believes in a conspiracy of sorts. Because if Brian Dunning is a scientist, right, and he's classifying himself as a man of reason, and he loves people and he doesn't want to see people get hurt by fake alcoholic drugs, which I agree with that. I saw that as a promotion 100%. So I agree with Brian Dunning with the alcohol thing. Whether he was selling something or not, that's not really important. I mean, that can lead to hurting people. It's just like the marijuana thing. People believe that you have this after morning marijuana pill thing where you can smoke weed and take some kind of weird drug and then the marijuana won't show up in your system. Like I've never believed in that. And I wouldn't gamble on my job and smoke weed and take that product and think it's going to clear out my system. And so basically, whoever this guy was that was on the Joe Rogan show promoting this alcohol thing, he's basically making the alcohol version of this weed thing that you can use to get out of your system. But so Brian Dunning is basically saying to Joe Rogan that if he talks about 9/11 being a conspiracy in any way, shape, or form, that he's basically going to put Joe Rogan on his top 8, bad guy list, because he's saying that Joe Rogan is promoting harmful conspiracy theories. But see, part of being a scientist or an investigator is looking at clues and details and looking at anomalies, like in the show Columbo. Um, you know, I don't see, the thing is, if it wasn't a conspiracy and if the government didn't have any involvement in it, then it wouldn't be really harmful to speculate, because it doesn't really harm anyone. The people that are actually thinking about 9/11 and Tower 7 at these different angles, they're not the bad guys. They're just people that are trying to help. Some of them are smart and they're helpful and they put things together and it's pretty cool. And some people are just straight stupid, and they say things that just make absolutely no sense. So it really depends upon the person. Um, but like I said, at the end of the day, people are generally trying to help. Um, Even with Alex Jones, when he was talking about this Sandy Hook thing and saying that that was a hoax, that was inappropriate. But you got to remember, at the end of the day, Alex Jones is trying to help in the best way that his very aggressive brain can help. And so it doesn't mean that whatever he says you should believe, and it doesn't matter because someone has a large audience. It's not like Joe Rogan or Alex Jones or these cult leaders, and his audience are like these mindless zombies that, you know, if they say Sandy Hook's a hoax, people are just going to believe Sandy Hook's is a hoax. Like, I heard the Sandy Hook's hoax thing, and I don't believe that Sandy Hook is a hoax at all. And I do believe that it was an insult to the families. But at the other end, people are allowed to speculate. You know, that's what makes the country a free country. You got to remember too, and they explored that in the '90s concerning like video games. Like, you know, people play video games and turn violent. Some people are susceptible to certain things, you know, and you really can't control that. And everyone else doesn't have to basically be in a stupor, because there's like people that take information the wrong way and then turn negative and hostile. Uh, I mean, basically, you know, if you're not, if you can play a video game and it causes you violence, you need to be in a controlled situation because you're out of control. Obviously, you can't control yourself. You know, I used to play video games and I would get angry, but I wouldn't get like, you know, I want to grab a gun angry. I would just be like, man, you know, I was angry because the video game was beating me. But I never gave up. You know, I kept at the game, and eventually I won. So like, what Brian Dunning is doing, he's basically giving Joe Rogan a warning. He's saying, you know, if you talk about certain things, this can lead to certain consequences, and I'm going to put you on my bad list. But if you play ball and you be careful about what you say, then I'll remove you off my top 8, and, you know, I'll send this out to, you know, my higher ups, and they'll also remove you from their top 8 lists of potential anti-government, anti-Jewish conspiracy people. Like I said, if there was no conspiracy there, why is this man so threatened? Why did this man travel all the way to the Joe Rogan show to have this debate with Joe Rogan about something that is objectively obvious? That's dumb. They could have just sent. I mean, they could have just Facebooked, or, you know, FaceTimed each other and just said, "Hey, that Tower 7 looks weird," and he would have been like, "Yeah, I agree, it looks weird too." And then boom, it would have been like case closed. But to sit there and have a 2-hour long to 3-hour long debate about something that's very obvious, that's obviously a controlled demolition. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't take a genius to see that, because they're trying to say that the other 2 towers collapsed and that debris flew off from those and then hit that one, and then magically started a fire, and then the fire caused a perfectly controlled demolition. And then they're going back and forth about the angle of the building falling. What does that matter? That doesn't even mean anything. Like, if the building falls at an angle, or if it falls straight down into what they call like a central pile, what does that matter? That doesn't even mean anything. That's like, as scientists and intelligent people, like, I wouldn't even address that, because you're not a you know what I mean? Like, you don't build buildings. Like, you're not a structural engineer. So like, it doesn't matter whether it went to the side or not. That's just someone's opinion. What is more important to actually debate is what caused the buildings to collapse. You know, what caused the Tower 7 to collapse. They went on for 3 hours and never really addressed that. Because if Brian Dunning had brought up that he thinks that debris from another building hit Tower 7 and caused Tower 7 to collapse, then you would have to question Brian Dunning's scientific method, you know, in terms of deducing probabilities and events that could occur. Because if a piece of debris fell off a building of one of the other 2 towers and it hit Tower 7, I'm assuming, I don't know if he's saying that debris was on fire or not, but if it was just a chunk of cement hitting another chunk of cement, no matter how hard it struck Tower 7 wouldn't just catch fire and nobody's putting the fire out, and then it just kind of spreads to the building and then just causes this like perfect collapse. So obviously it was a controlled demolition, and people should be allowed to say that it's obviously controlled demolition. And if it leads to other, I don't even like to use the word conspiracy, because the word con means to like somebody's trying to fool you. If it leads to other investigations, because you got to remember, at the end of the day, like even if Joe Rogan says that the government is involved in 9/11, even if he says it's a Jewish conspiracy or a Saudi Arabian conspiracy or an Iraqi conspiracy, maybe Saddam was really pissed off and he was masterminded all this before he got took down or something like that. But people are allowed to speculate. I have my own theories about 9/11 and what occurred, but it doesn't mean that I'm trying to like aggravate people that aren't smart. I'm actually trying to be helpful. I'm just saying that like a building went down, a lot of people were hurt, and there was a lot of strange circumstances around it. If someone asked me, it was the government involved, I would say the government. I don't think the government was involved. I think there were certain people that were employed in certain positions that had a part in that, but I wouldn't say that the government was involved, because there's good people in the government. Um, I just think it was a very highly organized network of people that wanted to make a very large profit. Um, and, you know, they made a large profit. What can I say? Uh, that's. So I don't know. You know, um, like I said, you can look at the evidence. What's more shocking is not necessarily the intelligence of the people that were behind Tower 7, but what's more shocking to me is the fact that I don't know. I just don't think people care enough. Like Brian Dunning says that he cares about people in one breath, but then people that try and intelligently investigate 9/11, he all of a sudden becomes he's not a caring person all of a sudden anymore. So I don't know. I think he was bullying Joe Rogan. Um, I mean, I wouldn't say he's bullying Joe Rogan, but he's just basically giving Joe Rogan a warning uh, about this 9/11 towers. What's cool is that actually 9/11, and then you got that Tower 7 is like 7/11. But I just made that up. That doesn't mean that it is what it is, but that's still kind of funny. Let's listen to this interview a little bit. Now that's absolutely 100% false. Now, see, the thing is, like, Brian Dunning doesn't know what a conspiracy theory is. Basically, when someone is developing a conspiracy theory, like I'll give you an example. Like they shot Martin Luther King Jr. Right now, say if someone had a little bit of prior knowledge that Martin Luther King Jr. Was going to be shot, and he said, "I think Martin Luther King Jr. is going to be shot," and then Martin Luther King Jr. Was shot. That doesn't mean that he's some sort of weird conspiracy theorist. He might have had some type of inside information. I mean, that's a bad analogy. What I'm trying to say is that, like, what he is calling conspiracy theories are people just investigating and looking at things. And people are entitled to do that. Who is this Brian Dunning guy and the people that are behind him that are coming along and saying that someone can't, you're not allowed to think beyond what's given to you because it might be harmful to other people who play violent video games and go out and do violent things? See, the thing is, we don't have to bow down to the people that play video games and then go out and do violent things. If you play video games and you're prone to like violence, then the people that produce the video games need to make video games that won't trigger these people. Like they need to play like I don't know, some sort of peaceful game that has just no violence. And you know what I mean? And then maybe the video game producers can produce video games that just don't have any violence. But I know with violence that people will always find like some sort of an outlet for violence. So even if they're not playing a video game, they'll be angry in a different way. But that anger just needs to be addressed. But I forgot what the heck I was talking about. But the point is that Brian Dunning cannot say that Joe Rogan promotes conspiracy theories, because he's basically saying, and then that it's dangerous to the audience. He's basically saying that Joe Rogan is not allowed to think. And that's not true. Brian Dunning is allowed to think and do what he wants, you know, within the lines that he wants. See, Brian Dunning, I mean, like I said, I think Brian Dunning is smart. I think he's giving Joe Rogan a warning, but nobody wants to live in a world like that, where you can't talk and express yourself and be weird. You know what I mean? Like, people are allowed to be weird. You know, if you're listening to someone, and people know who's weird, like Joe Rogan's a weird kind of dude. You can see it when you first click on his show, like this red-faced weird face pops up, you know. That's weird. So obviously, whatever, you know, if you're hanging out with Joe Rogan, you're gonna experience some weirdness, but he's smart. Same with Brian Dunning. He's a different level, different kind of weird. Or Alex Jones, he's a different level, different kind of weird. Or I'm a different level, different kind of weird. But the thing is, like, none of us are criminals, and we're entitled to think. You know, like, just like with Roswell, if they uncovered 3 alien bodies, so what? You know what I mean? It doesn't mean just because I say that Roswell uncovered 3 bodies, that 3 bodies actually exist, and that some weak-minded person out there is gonna like start running around looking for aliens. You're always gonna have weak-minded people in society. You're always gonna have weak-minded people that are gonna take things a little bit too far. But I've looked through a lot of these videos concerning 9/11, and I find them to be very fascinating. Some fingers point directly at people, and so what? You know, you know, what went on in 9/11, that's between them, their deity, and their victims. You know what I mean? And so people aren't dumb. People know what happened. So it doesn't matter if Brian Dunning comes on the show and tells Joe Rogan not to talk about it. Joe Rogan is small in the grand scheme of like media. You know what I mean? Like, even if he does get like 9 million views, there's 6 billion people. He's not accessing everyone. It's not like, and another thing too is like, he's not going to start no revolution that already couldn't be started. So it's not like people are just going to listen to like Joe Rogan, even if Joe Rogan gave like all 100% information about what he knows about 9/11, whether he believes what he researched is true or not. But just say if he just dumped all that out, which would be very amazing, because I was very impressed that Joe Rogan said that Tesla technology was used in the demolition of the 2 towers. Now, I don't really believe that. I would need more evidence. That would mean that every tower that is destroyed using Tesla technology, including maybe Tower 7. I don't know. But the thing is, for Joe Rogan to even say that, for me as a researcher, that's fascinating. So I don't want Brian Dunning to come along and be like, Joe Rogan, if you say that like Tesla technology was used in the demolition of the 2 towers, some weak-minded dude that plays violent video games might go out and like, I don't know, like punch a building with his hand and then hurt his hand. We don't have to bow to that, to the weak-minded person. And Joe Rogan should be allowed to express himself, because it's not like I believe that Tesla technology was used in the demolition of the 2 towers. I just think that, like, you know, I'm like Joe Rogan. I think that that's fascinating. I think anything that any human being presents, whether I agree with it or not, if they present it in a cool way, I'll still think it's fascinating. And so people are allowed to express things that are cool. You know, he said he went to some marijuana shop. Some dude gave him a big book. He didn't know if the dude was a doctor or not. And as he was reading, you know, he saw this like Tesla technology could use to, be used to demolish buildings or whatever. And then guess what Brian Dunning does? Pseudoscientist Brian Dunning. He comes along and tries to just demote Tesla, forgetting that there's self-driving Tesla cars right now in 2018. And the thing is, Brian Dunning, why would you try and demote Tesla, when you have nowhere near the intelligence of Tesla, you don't even have nowhere near the intelligence of Joe Rogan, from my perspective, unless you just really just clam up in this shell and just really hide your intelligence. But Joe Rogan would be a better scientist than Brian Dunning. From my perspective, I'd rather be on a science team with Joe Rogan than Brian Dunning, because Brian Dunning's going to hit brick walls. He's going to always be right, or he's going to always want to be right. And we're not really going to make a lot of progress. Under Joe Rogan, we would be halfway across the universe, because Joe Rogan's always, he's not going to be afraid to implement new ideas. He would be like Captain Kirk. So like I said, let me listen a little bit more of this. You are an asshole. And see, the thing is that like it's not some type of childish debate technique, because it's not a debate. If he says some Men in Black dude gave him some sort of camera, so what? That's just his opinion. I believe that I got abducted by gray aliens in 1988. So what? The thing is, he's allowed to express that, and like it's fascinating. Why would you? You're not even like making yourself look like an asshole. You're making yourself look like some sort of domineering, insecure male with like extremely low intelligence. You know what I mean? Calling what Joe Rogan is saying conspiracy theories. They're not conspiracy theories. They're just, you know what I mean? Like uh, things happen in nature. What are you trying to say, Brian Dunny? Are you trying to say that you're nature master, that you know everything, and unless something is brought through you and confirmed by you, it doesn't exist? Are you the all-seeing eye? Were you at Roswell? Were you at the Tuscan event or whatever that crap's called? Were you at every UFO crash sighting? Can you bind the chains of the Pallades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. You like I said, your show will be boring because you don't know, Brian Dunny, because you don't know how to think outside the box. You're not gonna sit there and, I mean, who watches your show, really? To be honest with you, um, I mean, you could flip it on me and say who watches mine, but I don't care. The point is that if you tune into my show, one thing you're gonna know is I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna bow down to some weak-minded person, and I'm not going to allow someone to call what I am investigating a conspiracy theory, because it's not. We're allowed. People are allowed to look into things and make assumptions, and then it's the job of the audience to then decide whether they believe it or not. But it doesn't mean that because Joe Rogan presents an alternative theory that then it's a conspiracy theory and that he's leading people astray and that it could have some kind of harmful effects. It doesn't work like that, buddy. How it works is that a person is allowed to present whatever they want to present. Just like if I got in a time machine, right, and I went back to the 1600s and I had a cell phone, you know what I mean, and I presented it to the people, um, and or say if I went up to someone and I was like, man, I got this cell phone, I can do this and this and that, you know what I mean, and people didn't know about cell phones. It would be a conspiracy, but it doesn't mean that I'm not a time traveler and I don't have a cell phone. I know that's another bad analogy, but you get what I believe that people are relatively smart. If you're whatever kind of scientist that you are, I didn't look you up. I should have looked you up, Brian Dunny. That was my fault. But you claim you're a scientist. I don't see it. I don't know what university you went to or what kind of studies you did. I'm not seeing that. In fact, I thought you were like a shock jock, like Howard Stern. But even Howard Stern is intelligent. I mean, when you listen to Howard Stern talk, he's like Joe Rogan. He's very intelligent. He's weird. He's quacky. He's quirky, but he's extremely intelligent. Joe Rogan is extremely intelligent. Alex Jones, extremely intelligent. And if they have some type of, you know what? I want to trade the word conspiracy for creative theory, because that's really what it is. And then you decide whether the creative theory is fact or theory when someone presents their creative theory. Because con has, the word con means to fool, like Congress and con man and con artist and con game and the con words. And so I don't like that, because I don't think that these people that are presenting these theories are trying to con people. Some people are trying to con people, like the psyops that created the Sandy Hook thing, which hooked Alex Jones, and then he ruined himself. You can call that a conspiracy, but really it's a creative theory, because I don't know what happened in Sandy Hook. I just know it was a terrible tragedy. I don't believe it is a hoax personally, and it probably is inappropriate for Alex Jones to say that Sandy Hook was a hoax. But the thing is, he wasn't trying to harm the families by saying like it didn't happen. He's a creative theorist. You know what I mean? And so, and I understand what Brian Dunning is saying, is that sometimes with people's creative theories, people can be hurt. But at the end of the day, though, you have to look. You have to see the bigger picture. You know what I'm saying, Brian Dunning? And that's the fact that Alex Jones is not expressing his creative theories to be out of maliciousness and evilness. He's not sitting there and saying, Sandy Hook is a hoax and screw all the families. Like, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, I love the family so much that I'm looking into creative theories and alternative theories as to what happened. Even if they're weird, I'm looking into it. That's from a position of love, like him busting into Bohemian Grove. Even Joe Rogan talking about aliens and all the cool stuff that he does. He's doing that from a position of love. So you got to remember, even though you're putting Joe Rogan on your bad list, calling him a conspiracy theorist, he's really a creative theorist, and he's doing it from a position of love. Joe Rogan is obviously loved by a lot of people. That's why he has such a large audience. And because he expresses creative theories, that's why people tune in. That's why I tune in. I've been watching Joe Rogan ever since Fear Factor. I've been watching Joe Rogan, be an announcer for the UFC. And one of the fascinating, cool things that I liked about Joe Rogan actually being an announcer for the UFC is that he actually brought equality to the UFC in terms of announcing. Because I remember that, in the past when I'd watch UFC and boxing, the announcers were very one-sided. They were very, like, I don't want to use the word, but I am going to use the word because I don't care, racist. And so Joe Rogan brought the racistness out of announcing, and he would just look at fighters as fighters. So somebody would say, "Well, that black fighter, he's just winning off talent," and Joe Rogan would say, "No, this guy is, you know what I mean? Like he's skilled at what he does, even if he's black, or even if he's white or whatever he is, And he taught us about the omoplata choke, ring control and this and that, and and he has a lot of respect for these fighters, and he eliminated a lot of the racism that was coming from these announcers during these UFC fights, and that's awesome. And so for the first time in my life, because I'm black, I was actually able to watch the UFC from an impartial perspective and not have to worry about racism, because I knew that Joe Rogan would always come and save the day and be impartial when he's looking at the UFC bouts. And then not only that, I would get intelligent feedback. And so Brian Dunning is coming and calling this man that works so hard for people a pseudoscientist and a conspiracy theorist. Brian Dunning, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're not a smart person. You're a bully and you're insecure. Either that, or you're working for someone, but you're too good a slave, man. Relax, man. You got money. You got a paycheck coming in. Your show's not in danger. Maybe you came on like I said. I think Brian Dunning might be smart. My own creative theories that he might have came on just to give Joe Rogan a warning to not really talk too much about 9/11, because the people that did 9/11 are violent could possibly hurt him. Maybe if he's that smart. Or option B, he's not that smart and he's just a bully. But like I said, whichever way you slice the pie, no matter who he works for or whatever, people have the right to express creative theories. And anyone that's generally, expressing some sort of a creative theory, I think is trying to help. See, the only reason why they're really having this conversation is because obviously there's some truth to the Tower 7 being controlled demolition, which would link to other things as being fact. That's what basically Brian Dunning is saying. He's saying if you believe in Tower 7 being a controlled demolition, then you believe in all these like Jewish and government conspiracies, is what he's saying. And he's right. Nobody's going to sit there and believe in like Tower 7 being a controlled demolition and not believe in the other creative theories. But the thing is that a lot of people were hurt. People were interviewed that were actually victims of those two towers, and they had their own creative theories. And as victims, just like Sandy Hook's, they express their pain and remorse. They're allowed to do that. That's what is supposed to make the United States cool, is that it's supposed to be founded upon freedom and freedom of speech. And so what Brian Dunning is saying is that he doesn't have, that Joe Rogan doesn't have the right to freedom of speech. So why Brian Dunning even come on the show? Brian Dunning, you were skipping class. You need to go back to school. You're not very smart. It has nothing to do with you being an asshole. You're not smart, man. People are allowed to express themselves. Shoot, people only got one life to live. You think people are about to just sit up and be like you and just be a bubble and keep the you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. They could say that maybe like Joe Rogan is enlightening the masses, but like Joe Rogan isn't telling anybody that anything that they can't look up themselves. Like I have an old saying when it comes to like secrecy. I always say, you know what? You tell people what they already know, but you don't tell people what they don't know. That's the art of secrecy. So if I know something that I know you don't know, there's no way on earth I'm going to tell you. But I'll tell you any secret that I think that you already know. Meaning that anything that Joe Rogan would tell people, he got it from a source, and the people can look that up. And so it does. And they're just using Joe Rogan as an easy access source. If Joe Rogan does talk about Tower 7 or Roswell, that information's already out there. Wherever Roswell, New Mexico is, the local news already had broke that story. So it doesn't matter if Joe Rogan comes along 40 or 50 years later and he brings it back up. It's already there. So I'm thinking that whoever sent Brian Dunning to the Joe Rogan show, or if Brian Dunning just volunteered, paranoid. You know what I mean? Like, they're paranoid, man. You know what I mean? They don't want like no criticism and opposition at all. Calm down, man. You know what I'm saying? Just because Joe Rogan presents something doesn't mean that the world's gonna all of a sudden get smart and try and topple all, your masterful plans. Relax. You know what I'm saying? Like, uh, you're fine, man. If people really didn't like what you're doing, people are smart. They would just march wherever you are and just take care of you. But they're not doing that. You know, that's why they call them the sheep. The sheep are passive. So relax. Let Joe Rogan be himself. Um, he's cool. He's no threat. And Brian Dunning, read some books and become a creative theorist. And maybe your audience might grow a little bit. Maybe I might tune in if you actually have something halfway intelligent to say. Because right now you're making yourself look bad. After watching this interview, I will probably not watch a Brian Dunning show because he's not going to have any type of alternative angles to anything. He's looking for zombies. Well, anyway, I want to look at a controlled demolition real quick. Now watch this. Do you see all those little lights? Those were the lights from the explosions. So the explosions happened inside the building. See? Now what happened to the top half of that building? Oh, I guess it was already missing. So let me just get rid of that. So here's another. See how they call it conspiracy theory? No, it's a creative theory. Wait, what did you just say? He looks like Joe Rogan if like Joe Rogan didn't make it big. A little bit. Come on, man. It would take a genius to figure out that that was destroyed in controlled demolition. Come on. Right. And this Brian Dunning dude does not have a small amount of open mindedness, or if he does, he's just like some sort of a super slave. So like it says the North Tower collapsed on 11/2001 September. Heavy debris hit uh, 7 World Trade Center, damaging the south face of the building. So he's basically saying like the Incredible Hulk hurled a boulder. We don't know if the boulder was on fire or not. And that boulder struck another building. Remember, this is cement impacting cement. And it somehow miraculously started, because, you know, if you rub 2 rocks together, you get fire. And it turned into a fire. And what else happened? Look at this goofy stuff. It says, in particular, the fire is on floors 7 through 9 and 11. That's 9, 11, and 7 again in Tower 7. How goofy is that? This numerology that's in here. So the thing is, like, when you see little goofy stuff like that, some people have the ability to put like connect like dots, uh, and that's all right. It's not bad. So I mean, that's goofy. So some people were saying there's thermite in the building. I don't know. We don't know. All I know, it is a controlled demolition. It might lead to other creative theories, but so what? People are allowed to think. Like I said, these people aren't the bad guys. They're allowed to think. Here's another one, just showing the collapsing of it. You hear that guy in the background? He was like, "Oh my god!" So all we're saying is that if the other 2 buildings were struck by a plane and they collapsed, then why did this one just magically collapse? And we didn't see any giant boulder fly off from the other building and hit this one and knock it down. So like that's not true. And so people are allowed to think like that. That doesn't hurt you. Like I said, people aren't just, even if someone believed what I was saying or what someone else was saying, you know, concerning that tower, there's not going to be a mass uprising, man. Whoever's paranoid out there, you need to relax, son. As they say in New York, relax, son. Yeah, yeah, man, you bugging, son. Paranoid, son. Paranoid. Time traveling scientist. Isn't that interesting? I was just talking about time traveling myself. But so it doesn't matter whether what people believe or what they investigate or whether they believe the moon landing was a hoax or not. People are allowed to have creative theories. That's what the paranoid people and the crazed video game lunatic has to understand. The intelligent aren't to bow to the people who have like mental illness. The mentally ill need treatment so that we, smart people can make intelligent analysis of like things. See, the thing is, with Joe Rogan too, is that like the guy knows, like if he's smart enough to make it to the Joe Rogan show, then he obviously knows what Joe Rogan is talking about. It's just like when you run into Jehovah's Witnesses, and you tell them like if you read in the book of Job, Job has 7 sons and 3 daughters, and then you connect like 7 sons to the 7 stars of the Pleiades star system, and the 3 daughters are the 3 belts of Orion because the Orion's belt is also called the 3 sisters. Now, Jehovah Witness will dismiss that correlation, but it's clearly in the book of Job. It's a creative theory, and it's interesting. And so the Jehovah Witness is not really going to believe or take what you say into account, not because they don't think that what you're saying is accurate. It's just that the Jehovah Witness is sent by someone and they're given a script, and they're just all they can do is just follow that script. And anything that is not in line with that script, they have to dismiss it as being false. And so those are the problem people of the world, are people like not necessarily the Jehovah's Witness, but the heavy mind control that they're under. And I didn't mean to say heavy mind control. What I meant to say is that like it is not right for the Jehovah Witness to be able to put out information and not receive information, because that's what they want to do. They want to say we have all the answers, and if you try and give us an answer, you're wrong. And then it's no wonder why China, destroyed a whole bunch of Jehovah Witnesses church in China. Not because they think that the Jehovah's Witnesses are bad. I respect their conservatism and their beliefs and traditions. But like I said, it's with any religion. As soon as you start saying I have all the answers and you don't, that to me is a sin. That's evil. That's disingenuous. That's not cool. Whatever word you want to use, that's not cool. Doesn't matter what field of science that you'd present that in. If you believe you have all the answers, I don't have all the answers. I have a lot of answers, but I don't have all the answers. But I'm not going to sit there and tell someone else that's trying to give me an answer that their answer is not right because it conflicts with what I pre-programmed myself to believe. I'll simply just listen to what you say. I actually agree with it. But what I'll do is I'll go and, match it with the information that I've collected over the years, and then I'll look it up and research it, and then I'll verify it. And then I'll come to a conclusion as to what you're saying is true or not. How can the Jehovah's Witness be the true Church of Christ when they were founded in the 1800s, which is like 1,000 years or 2,000 years after Jesus Christ died? You know what I mean? So, but the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that. and they're entitled to believe that. You know, they're a creative theorist cult that believes that their church is going to save the world. Um, but like I said, I wouldn't get rid of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the reason why is because they're allowed to express their position. They're even allowed to actually ignore you and promote their belief system, even though that's super annoying and super ignorant. They're still allowed to do that, and I enjoy that. Uh, Now, see, Brian Dunning, I have to take back my, call him stupid now. He just kind of enlightened me because I didn't even know that like Werner von Braun had went to the Antarctica to gather up meteorites, which I don't even know why he would even think meteorites are that hard to bring them back to say that they faked the moon landing. The average person would know the difference between a meteorite or and a regular rock anyway. So I don't even know why he would go to the Antarctic to try and dig up meteorites. That doesn't make any sense. I don't believe that. But it's an interesting creative theory. I enjoy hearing that. That's funny. Okay, so how in the world does a rock get from the moon to like Antarctica? And also, what I want to know is, did they find the thing, uh, John Carpenter's The Thing, while they were in Antarctica? Not a conspiracy, a creative theory. The thing is, like, who cares, like, if people went to the moon or not? Like, I don't understand, like, why people are like constantly debating that and debating like flat Earth. Like, if even if they did go to the moon, like, what does that matter? Okay, they went to the moon. Okay, they didn't go to the moon. So what? Even if they fake going to the moon, even if they did, what does it matter? It doesn't. That is not important. It's like watching something that's not important. See, he likes to say like science writer, but you're a computer scientist. It doesn't mean like you're a scientist in like all fields. 2,134 engineers. That's a lot. They're not obsessing about anything. These are architects and engineers. This architects and engineers are basically, you know, they study things like uh, structures of buildings. If you're a computer scientist and you're not a structural engineer and you're not an architect nor an architect or engineer, how can you sit there and just say that these people that have degrees in their field are obsessing? See, you're trying to cover up something, which means you're the one that believes in the conspiracy. And you're like the Jehovah Witness. You're trying to basically tell people to not believe in the 9/11 creative theory. So you have something to hide. And you're just trying to tell other people to hide too. I don't know. Did you make some cash on that 9/11 thing, and you trying to cover it up? Because I think that's kind of weird, Brian Dunning. So I don't know. Like I said, he talks about that, that alcohol dude, um, or whatever. But I don't know. This conversation, I don't. I mean, it doesn't matter if like Brian Dunning knows them or not. He's not an architect or engineer. It's just like Joe Rogan set that up beautifully. It's outside of your element. It's not your like he's this dude is a computer scientist, right? But yeah, he's trying to say that he's like the god of all different science fields. He's not. Brian Dunning showing his ignorance, gonna try to sit there and try and call somebody dumb and pseudoscience. A little bit, a lot disingenuous. Disingenuous is code word or a nice and polite way for calling someone a liar. He said both me and you believe that they're wrong, but it doesn't mean that they're wrong. See, he's always trying to play it safe, man. Like and be like, you know what I'm saying? Like you have the right to think what you want to think. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you can be smart. I mean, he's being smart about it, but I mean, he's basically letting this dude like kind of aggress him like that. You know what I mean? Like that's how all this stuff. You know, that's how all this 9/11, all this other crap starts off in the first place when you let people aggress you. See what I'm saying? Like you can't let somebody bully you. You didn't do anything wrong. You're just speculating. Like he's coming along and saying that if you're speculating, you're crazy or something like that, or obsessive, or you know, you're neurotic or something like that. No, I wish I could debate Brian Dunning because and I could debate Brian Dunning without even bringing up no 9/11 stuff, but just to challenge that man's logic and reasoning. I think Joe Rogan was so busy trying to defend himself from being linked to a government conspiracy concerning 9/11 that he didn't even really put really the chess moves on Brian Dunning like he should have. Or Brian Dunning could be just super duper super smart, and he's just playing devil's advocate. Because I believe that if Brian Dunning is on the Joe Rogan show, he has to be like kind of like smart. Or else Joe Rogan wouldn't even invite him on the show and have a conversation. Or you know, like I said, Brian Dunning could basically be giving like Joe Rogan a warning about the crazy elites or whatever, and then kind of like playing devil's advocate because he's a computer scientist, you know. And so I think for him to even come on the show, he must believe in the creative theory, which he calls a conspiracy theory to a degree, because he said he believes that Tower Seven is a was a controlled demolition, which means he obviously believes about other things that follow. He's just trying to be like super smart and not admit that, because if this man knows that Warner Brown, or however you pronounce his name, went to the Antarctica and was gathering meteorite stones, and I don't even know that, and I research a lot of these creative theories, then he can also look at 9/11 and link other things. He just doesn't want to admit it for some reason. So basically, the show is set up as Joe Rogan is presenting something, and then this guy is coming on and being devil's advocate. Because like, if you look at Brian Dunning's, he doesn't look like a bad guy. He doesn't look like a bad guy. You know what I mean? He's a hard ass, but I don't see any like evilness exuding off this guy. Um, I think he's just playing devil's advocate. I think he is. Well, you have to be smart to be a computer scientist. So I can't say because I disagree with his position concerning 9/11 that makes him dumb. I was just I was just name calling, just like people do that, but it doesn't mean that I don't like Brian Dunning. He's entitled to his position. Joe Rogan's entitled to his position. I have mine. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to examine this Joe Rogan thing for myself. I just browsed the internet and ran into it and just decided to do a video about it for absolutely no reason. But um, I'm a Black Gray Alien. This is the Black Gray Alien channel. Thank you for brothers and sisters for tuning in, or anybody who took the time to watch this and analyze this with me. Be blessed and have a good day. I'm out.